Welcome to the Success Revenue Podcast, the only podcast in the Middle East that brings you leaders in customer success, account management, sales, and go-to-market to share ideas, perspectives, and valuable learnings on how to successfully drive revenue, delight customers, and take it to the next level.
We're your host. I'm Haider Al-Sad, CEO of RevCenter, the modern customer management platform. And I have my lovely co-host with us today, Ivy Ferrero, CS Executive, Keynote Speaker, and Advisor. And we can be more excited to bring you a long list of great guests throughout this season, including today's guest, where we have someone that has 15, 20 years of experience, especially in the cybersecurity space, which is super interesting. And we'll do a deep dive into everything cybersecurity, customer success today, and explore several different topics. A few of the things that I think will be particularly interesting to take away from today's conversation. One is how customer success is and should be run in general, but also within the context of a complex space like cybersecurity. And very interesting thoughts around that. Another thing that I think was really interesting from the conversation today that we'll dig into will be the importance of a well-defined customer education process and training program, and how that can really free up customer success managers and other CS people to be a lot more proactive. And lastly, a key topic, I think, within most industries that we'll dig into today with the context of cybersecurity is AI and how AI can help further and develop the space and customer success, but also some of the risks and challenges associated with that. So I believe we have a great episode ahead with a guest that has tremendous experience from across global regions and, of course, being based here in the Middle East, experience from here. But it's definitely an interesting topic to jump into. First of all, how are you? How's it been since we last spoke on our last episode?
I have been so good.
There.
I've been so good. I mean, we've been recording so many podcasts that I'm losing track of everything. But yeah, it's been so amazing because I feel like this is the best way of creating community, especially in the Middle East. It's just like spotlighting people that have so much knowledge, like the guest that we are going to be interviewing today, which, by the way, I don't know anything about cybersecurity. So I'm really excited to see what they're doing, how they're leveraging AI. Right. And also one thing that is obviously really important is how are regions different from one another when it comes down to cybersecurity and yeah. So I'm super excited. What about you? Do you know much about cybersecurity?
I know probably more than I should know. I have worked with a lot of cybersecurity customers over the years, and we have a lot of them using RevCenter as their customer success platform and whatnot. So I've kind of been kind of thrown into understanding cybersecurity a little bit better. I'm not an expert by any means, like our guest today, but I have a good feel for it, and I think it's such an interesting space and how customer success is conducted there, because there's a lot more complexity in there. There's typically more technical products and a little bit more kind of high need of sales engineers and things of that nature to really provide the value to the customer. So similar to fintech or other more complex industries, cybersecurity is definitely a really interesting one. So I'm excited about today's conversation. I think I'll learn a ton. I'm sure you'll learn some as well going through this with our guest today. But one thing I was thinking about, Ivy, actually the other day, I'm kind of looking at our region here in the Middle East, and like you said, kind of highlighting community and getting more and more people talking about customer success and go to market and learning from each other. It is interesting. I see more and more people now out there, whether that's on social and conversations, they're starting to really pay attention to customer success. And we see some companies taking the lead and doing that really well. I was kind of curious, have you noticed that as well recently, where it's been kind of really a nice momentum for customer success, account management, customer experience, everything kind of surrounding that?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it obviously not like the US, but definitely I feel like there is more and more people or more companies who are hearing about what are the benefits of having a customer success department and who are jumping on the wagon. So I'm super excited to see how and I think this is one of the byproducts on why I also felt that it was needed to create some sort of like customer success community where people can talk about what is customer success and what are the benefits, because I feel like the more people understand what customer success is, it's not really account management, which is more a proactive function or a reactive function. The more people understand what it is, the more companies are going to want to adopt a customer centric approach to how they manage their accounts, and also there'll be more creation of jobs. I feel like I get constant messages on LinkedIn of people that are trying to figure out how to get into customer success in Dubai. And I always have two pieces of advice. One, you have to be here in a way. And second of all, listening podcasts and whatnot. So I feel like job creation would be a huge thing when more companies actually start implementing customer success.
Yeah, no, great points. I agree with that fully. And being here in the market regionally, I think our guest today will probably ask some questions about the importance of that. So I think that would be interesting to hear from him as well. But yeah, I agree with you, Ivy. I'm very excited for today's conversation.
Yes.
What do you say? Should we bring in the guest? You ready to bring him on?
All right, here we go.
All right, go for it. Bring him on and let's do it.
All right, guys. So I am so excited today because we have Alex Jardine, who leads customer success and revenue operations at Polyswarm, which is a malware intelligence platform that combines unique threat samples with specialized detection engines. And he has a lot of expertise, both spanning customer success, sales, revenue operations, and he specializes in building high-performing teams that bridge customer experience with business growth. Alex, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. If you just want to kick us off and tell us a little bit more about you, where are you from, where are you based, and a little bit more about your background and how you ended up in customer success.
Sure. Yeah, it's a great pleasure to be here. So I'm based in Dubai in the UAE. I've lived here for the past 4 years, but my role is global, so it covers everything from West Coast US all the way through to the Far East. Background-wise, I spent 13 years in the public sector in law enforcement and intelligence, and then I spent the past 10 years in the private sector. That's been in a wide range of roles covering sales, customer success, as well as revenue operations. And all of that in the past 10 years has been in the cybersecurity sector.
Wow, really cool. And tell us a little bit more about the current company that you work for and your role at that company.
Yeah, sure. So my current role is Vice President of Customer Success and Revenue Operations at a company called Polyswarm. You've done a good job describing, what the company does. I've been here for over 2 years now. After I joined the company, I was basically brought in to build out customer success from scratch, and I spent the first 6 to 9 months doing that here. So building out a global function from start to finish. And then after I finished doing that, I then built out the revenue operations function after that. That was to improve the business intelligence going back and forth and to help both sales and customer success run more efficiently with better data, basically.
Amazing.
Prior to coming here, my job was running customer success for Europe, Middle East, and Africa for another vendor. And when I was doing that, I also did professional services and training as well. So it's a real blend that's got me to where I am today.
Amazing. And Alex, with all the experience that you've had working in different regions, what are your thoughts of customer success in the Middle East?
So that's a really interesting question, because there is a significant difference in how customer success seems to be run and delivered in the Middle East compared to the US and Europe particularly. I would say there's also a big difference in the Asia Pacific region as well, but in the Middle East particularly, there's a real mixture of levels and quality of customer success. A lot of organizations have started elsewhere. So there's two places they tend to start. They either start in Europe and then go to the US and then go to the Middle East afterwards, or they start in the US, then they move to Europe, then they move to the Middle East. So by the time most organizations get here, it's the third or fourth part of the world. And so a lot of organizations haven't really committed the time and the money and the resources to get it right and to deliver truly excellent service. Whereas some organizations really have. And so you've got a real dichotomy of quality of service here.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And yeah, Alex, it's again, such a pleasure to have you on, because you have just a kind of deep experience in the customer success space, right? But as someone like yourself that worked in a lot of global markets, different regions, you kind of get an appreciation for that difference from process, culture perspective, and all the other things that go into it. So that's really interesting to hear your kind of thoughts as it relates to the Middle East region, but also as a comparison to other regions that you've been operating in and currently operate as well. And I was kind of curious because you spoke a little broadly there about the customer success space. Also with Polyswarm, you guys are in the cybersecurity space more kind of specifically. When you look at the customer success and also specifically within the cybersecurity space, what do you feel that is today? How kind of adopted is the customer success discipline, and where do you see your space evolving when it comes to customer success over the coming kind of couple of years? I'm curious to your perspective on that.
So that's a really interesting question as well. What I would say is that when companies are smaller, and when they're kind of at least before the 20 to 50 million ARR level, customer success is regarded as absolutely vital, and a lot of organizations really focus on getting that right. Once they go over the 50, but once you start looking at the really big organizations, perversely, the quality of customer success seems to just get worse and worse and worse as the ARR goes up and up and up. To the point at which where you have some really big customers, that are spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions, and they're getting a half an hour meeting once every 3 months. They're getting a slide giving them a highlight of what's been done, and they're having to pay for the privilege of it, as opposed to some of the smaller organizations that are bending over backwards to make sure you're successful. So it's really interesting. It's not how you would expect.
Definitely true. Yeah, it is a kind of, as that customer base really grows, I think sometimes it gets kind of too big to wrap your arms around unless you have really good processes from the get-go. So you end up, with kind of that little bit of fragmented process. So that makes a lot of sense. And kind of piggybacking off that a little bit, Alex, because I was curious, I was going to ask you what fascinates you about, working with customer success and cyber and that whole context of things. But I can imagine there's some kind of interesting challenges within just that idea of building something and creating that process. But what was it really that fascinates you with the role itself and the space that you're in? I'm curious.
So I think the most fascinating thing about customer success is that there is no one size fits all. And anybody that you see or hear telling you that there is you should avoid like the plague. You really need to understand deeply your customers and what each customer needs. The cookie cutter approach is the most lethal. If, for example, you design something for one customer or in one region and then try to apply that in other customers and other regions, that can be lethal to your relationships. So it's a lot more difficult designing something carefully and thoughtfully and based on data and intelligence, rather than just building a big system and hoping it works everywhere. But it's so worth the investment of time, because the results and the relationships that you build last so much longer if you're thoughtful and if you're mindful about how you deliver it. That's what fascinates me the most. There's no 2 days are the same. No two customers have the same needs. And it's such a very diverse role.
No, that was very, very much true. And I think my experience is often that there are people that say it's the same everywhere. Have only done customer success in one specific field, area, or company, maybe even, and that's kind of the reality that they have. But as you span across regions and sizes of companies and organizational types, you start really realizing there's some truths, but there's a lot of differences that are relative to the company and their customer base. So I think that's a great point, Alex.
100%. And another thing that you often see is if someone has success somewhere in a customer success role, they'll often try to create a template of what they're doing and then lift and shift that to another company and try and apply it wholesale. And it just does not work that way. If you're going to build or review or improve a customer success function, you need to start with a completely clean slate in each organization and understand exactly what the challenges of the customers that are in front of you are, rather than trying to use a template that you've got from elsewhere. That's vital.
I love that. And Alex, I did my little homework on Polyswarm, and I noticed that Polyswarm uses a unique crowdsourced models with blockchain incentives for threat detection. And I wanted to ask you, how does this approach affect your customer success strategies compared to other traditional cybersecurity companies?
So it has very little effect on the customer success side of the business, I would say. Polyswarm operates a two-sided marketplace. So think Uber, think Airbnb, where you have two sets of operators on both sides. In our case, on one side, we have engine providers who are assessing the data that's coming in, and on the other side is our customers. Now, all of the blockchain and the NCT Nectar tokens that are being used as rewards are all on the engine side. So what customers are seeing, and we've designed the platform very carefully in this way, is that the customers see very high quality data. They don't necessarily know or understand or care how the engine providers are, paid or incentivized on the engine side. So if you think of it with the Uber model, as a customer, you have a very simple, very easy to understand app. You got a very high quality service through it. You have no idea what the driver experience is or how they're recompensed or how the money varies. So all of the tokenization, all the blockchain work, all of that tends to be away from customers. So you don't need to get into these confusing conversations to try to explain it.
Got it. Okay, that completely makes sense. And when it comes down to, because at Polyswarm, you're both responsible for customer success and revenue operations. And how do you make sure that there is some sort of alignment between these functions to create a more cohesive customer journey and optimize the revenue growth?
Sure, that's a great question. So the most productive go-to-market organizations have got those three parts of the puzzle very closely tied together. So sales, customer success, revenue operations. If they diverge or if their processes diverge, you start to get tension and friction in the model. The best thing about my role here, and the thing that I've loved the most about the past 2.5 years, is being able to build two of those parts of the function from scratch, and to work very closely with the sales team on a daily basis as well. So everything is designed, every process is designed, every system is designed to make sure that all three pieces of the organization work well together. And realistically, getting those things right, you just need to think about every process and every system. Does this work well for each part of the puzzle? Not just does this work well for one. And so thinking about things from end to end, upside down as well, thinking about it from the customer backwards and end to end, that's the easiest way of getting your processes right. But it very much depends on the structure of your organization. If you have a very top-heavy organization, it really relies on the relationships between the senior leaders to try to align these things. But in a smaller organization, you can get these things right quite quickly to make sure every part of the organization works
Got
well.
it. And Alex, this makes me think about also customer experience. Is customer experience something that falls under customer success, or how do you make sure, or is that like a whole entire different function? And how do you make sure that all of the departments are aligned to make sure that the customer experience is the best?
So customer experience that's a really great question. It's a very topical one at the moment because everybody's trying to figure out where customer experience sits. And if you look at a lot of the roles that are being advertised, some organizations are now splitting customer experience away from other organizations and, for example, sitting them inside product management or sitting them inside marketing or sitting them elsewhere. In a smaller organization, the most important thing to do is to align your product management team with your customer success team and your sales engineering team. So your sales engineers and your customer success team are the people that are getting the face time with the customers and the prospects, and they're getting real-time feedback on what looks good and what doesn't. And also they're in the product every single day. So if you have your product managers and your developers constantly having that feedback loop of what's being said by the prospects and the customers, then the customer experience naturally flows from that. So customer experience really is it's a responsibility of everybody from developers to product managers to senior leadership, sales, customer success. It's a very hard thing to pin into one department, and it just relies on good relationships.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, no, it's very true, and it's a very topical right now. What the definition of it? Where should it sit? Who should own it? And it's a very interesting topic. And kind of, I wanted to pivot here because I was going to ask you a little bit about the kind of educational aspect of the space that you're in for customers, and also in terms of how you set up the marketplace. But it sounds like the customers are kind of somewhat shielded from the technicalities of how everything works, kind of how the software is made. They get the outcomes, they see it. But what I've been thinking about a little bit, especially from a cybersecurity standpoint, I've worked with many cyber tech companies over the years. The data and the technical kind of aspect of the platforms are usually a bit more intense than maybe just a regular, commercial SaaS product or what have you.
Yeah.
You mentioned sales engineers as well. So from a customer training perspective, customer success, you have sales engineers, you have, I'm sure, a lot of resources available to customers. How does that kind of load on the customer success team look? Are you guys very dependent on educating and training the customers, or is it more of a kind of a, once they're set up, it kind of flowed by itself? How's that paradigm for you guys in the cybersecurity space in your company?
That's a great question. So that's something that's been really top of mind over the past year. So at my previous organization, the education and training part of the organization was truly world class, and that had been built by several of my predecessors prior to getting there. A lot of that had been built into a dedicated learning and management system, so the customers could directly access customized training for what was a very, very complex solution. In my current role, it's a much more narrow focused solution. It's not an entire toolbox. It's a set of smaller tools. So there's a limited number of ways in which you can use the tools, which makes education and training design a lot easier. And so what we did when we first joined is we reviewed all of the documentation that we had, which started very much from, in the same way that most organizations work, they build a product and then they get the engineers to write a set of documentation based on that product. And then the customers dive into that documentation to try and figure out where they're going. What we then did was do a detailed review of that and improve it, but then press pause on everything and then flip it completely on its head, as I was describing earlier with everything else, and start customer.
Yeah.
And, okay, well, if the customer is only really doing 5 to 10 things, there's lots of vagaries of details in there, but let's start off with the simplest things that they could be doing and design videos and one-page PDFs, lots of varied educational content, so that we could do one-to-many rather than relying on customer success managers or trainers to deliver face-to-face content. And that's been hugely impactful. So having YouTube videos, having YouTube shorts, having one-page PDFs, using screenshots rather than just endless kind of blocks of text.
Right. Yeah.
That's like a huge impact on customer training. But to answer your question about the broader impact of customer training on customer success in general, the more you can invest in time in quality training content, the less customers will want hands-on time with your customer success managers, and then you can focus your time a lot more proactively on rather than teaching you how to do the basics. Why don't we just get back to focusing on what you really bought the thing for?
Yeah,
and make you successful with that.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I think that kind of upfront workload to get all the content right, make all the simple things available, allows you to free up time to do a lot more proactive work. I always tell kind of new CSMs or even salespeople, you see them doing a training or a demo with someone, and it's very much go through features, very basic stuff, and I always tell them, well, I could just send them a video to do exactly what you just did. Your job is to create value and talk about the business and the needs, but they need that foundation the customers do exactly to be able to do that as well. So no, that point is very well taken, Alex. And it kind of gets me thinking as well in terms of those efficiencies, right? And one topic that's everywhere we're talking about very topical questions, but it's AI, of course, right? AI. In every instance, every industry, they have their own conversations around AI and how it's being integrated. In my experience, I feel that cybersecurity space may be one of the places where there's some of the most interesting conversations about how to leverage AI within the threat detection, within the different capabilities of these types of platforms. Can you kind of talk about, from your perspective, how you see AI is having incorporation within cybersecurity technology, its impact on customer success, kind of as an extension of that, because it kind of has a balance there between the promise of efficiency and speed and these things, and the other side of it, which is, the customer adoption, the trust factor, and all those kind of risk pieces of using AI within that type of sensitive data. Where do you kind of land on that? What do you see from customer success perspective? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts here.
That's a big topic.
Yes, it is. I know.
So I will split that into two. So
yeah,
just thinking about it from the cybersecurity perspective, there's lots of potential that, and every organization in cybersecurity is racing to try to make something that's genuinely useful and trustworthy.
Yeah.
There's a flip side to that coin, which is in the cybersecurity space, customers are the least trusting of or around data security, and they're absolutely laser focused on making sure that their data isn't being abused or leaked or increasing their risk somehow. So there's a real difficulty there, because if you've got human beings that are working on something, or if you have a firewall solution where the data is going into that solution and not going out, then that's one thing. But if it's reaching out to external third-party platforms to be processed outside of that control to return results to you, that becomes a really difficult challenge. And even the Googles and the Apples of the world are really struggling with that. They're finding different solutions to it. But in the cybersecurity space, there's a big race on to try to remove the volume tasks. So the biggest thing I'm seeing in the cybersecurity space is AI agents to do the volume tasks. Getting somebody to manually go to 1,000, 10,000, 1 million websites, assess whether they're suspicious or not, would be a gigantic use of time. Whereas you can have an AI agent that can be doing that in bulk and feeding you the right information. That's an incredibly powerful use for it. But all I'm seeing so far, I mean, there's been huge scare stories about people's jobs being taken in the cybersecurity space. I'm not seeing any sign of that whatsoever at the moment. All I am seeing on the cyber side is a race to make useful AI agents to do the boring, laborious parts of the jobs a lot quicker, to make the people more efficient and effective at their jobs.
Yeah.
On the customer success side, that's something that I think every organization is thinking through very, very carefully, because it's potentially high reward, but also incredibly high risk if you get it wrong. The biggest thing about customer success is trust. And if you implement any solution, whether it be AI or traditional, that in any way breaks the trust between you and your partners or your customers, I mean, it can be so damaging for such a long period of time. And the world is a very small place now, and word travels very quickly. So people who have deployed agents particularly on websites or on SaaS platforms that work badly or hallucinate, are just having a terrible time at the moment getting feedback.
That makes sense.
And so it's a very sensitive area to think about carefully and test to get it right. But there's lots of potential in there. I just think it's going to be at least a year or two before you see an enormous amount of adoption, because the risk is so high. Where considering that every dollar of a company's revenue is protected by the customer success organization.
Yeah.
If you start breaking trust on that side, the damage can be absolutely enormous.
Yeah, 100%. Alex, one of the things that has been coming up is predictive analysis, right? When would it be a good time for AI to come out and have predictive analysis with our clients? And it almost seems that it would take a long time for this to actually happen, because there's so many health factors of an account, and it would take a long time for actually the AI to be smart enough to have predictive analysis. But is this something that excites you, if AI were to come out and have predictive analysis for all of your clients and the accuracy was really, really good?
So, I mean, I've worked with a lot of solutions in the past, and I've built and designed internal solutions as well that has used big data to try to draw analysis and try to predict based on multiple factors. I think AI is just the next step along that. I think a lot of platforms and a lot of organizations have been doing this for a long time, trying to understand key predictors. The good thing about certainly large language models, when applied well, is that you are able to very quickly get insights that you weren't able to, even with the best tools and platforms in the past. I think it's incredibly exciting if it works. And I think as with everything, whoever gets there first will dominate the market. And I think everybody is in a mad crazy race to get it right first.
Yes. And Alex, having built customer success operations across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, what are some regional differences that you have observed in how organizations approach threat intelligence and security operations?
That's an interesting one. So I would say that, interestingly, the four major global regions, the US, Asia Pacific, Europe, and then the Middle East, are all ever so slightly different in terms of the culture. I don't know if you've read the culture map, but that's a phenomenal book to understand, how different countries and how different nations generally deviate when it comes to culture in business. It's a really, really good book. In the US, organizations tend to be very, very clear and very strict in terms of how they've designed things. They want it their way. They want you to conform to their processes. There'll be a laundry list of, you need to do it 10 ways to make sure that it's correct for them. And then it really is a case of, that because they've been so clear, is delivering what they need and helping them succeed in their goals. I would say in Europe, it tends to be a step back from that. It tends to be a lot more collaborative. And you get a lot of organizations, they'll help you understand what their plan is, but they'll often ask you for advice, and they'll be much more willing to act on your advice and build something together. It tends to be a lot more collaborative. In the Middle East, I would say it is another step beyond that. So they're much more willing to outsource. They're much more willing to really rely on customer success and particularly professional services from organizations. They'd much rather, if you know what you're doing with your platform, just come in and deliver it for us, get it built, get the systems built, get it integrated, and then teach us. Is there much more? You see that a lot in the Middle East, where they're much more willing to just trust you and then take the handover at the end of it. The Asia Pacific is somewhere between Europe and the Middle East, I would say.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm definitely going to look up the book you just mentioned.
Yeah, the culture map is brilliant for anybody who works cross-regionally. It was a godsend for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's super interesting takeaways. And so, Alex, we're going to jump in here in a second to our kind of final section. I'll introduce that in a second. But I was just curious, kind of, because you built organizations, right, from a customer success perspective, started and scaled that. You've seen bigger ones and even part of different variations, right? If you would give kind of an executive in the Middle East right now, they're looking to build out or develop their customer success organizations, what are kind of the one or two things that you'd recommend that they do or think about and kind of start to scale customer success in their organization?
Specifically in the Middle East?
Yeah, I'm curious about this region because it's definitely different than what the advice I'm sure you give in the US or in Europe. APAC may be somewhat similar, but I'm kind of curious about the region here that we're in currently.
So the Middle East, my biggest advice would be to invest enough. That's vital, and that's something that organizations are definitely, I've seen, get wrong in the region. There's lots of vendors who've come into the region, not invested properly in customer success and sales, but primarily customer success. And then within 18 months to 2 years, they're gone again, because you can sell something once, but if you don't build that trust, you'll be gone by the time the renewal comes around. So investing, being willing to invest before you expand to the Middle East is vital. Because if you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is, don't go there yet. Wait until you are willing to invest and then do it properly. And having people in region, the Middle East is very sensitive to having people in region, much more so than Europe and the US particularly. In the US, customer success managers can be based anywhere around the world.
Yeah.
But in the Middle East, organizations are incredibly sensitive to that. What is your footprint here? How much money have you invested? What people have you put here? It's a real cultural difference in the Middle East that a lot of organizations don't necessarily, in a way, is similar to Germany. Germany and the Middle East are very, very similar in that respect. If you don't invest in the people and having offices locally, they won't deal with you.
Yeah.
So you could have a great year one and then just watch your business just tail off and disappear. Those are the two biggest things. And the third thing I would say is, don't even think about going down the digital customer success route initially in the Middle East. Expect it to be very high touch, very in person, very relationship based. You might get away with digital customer success in the US, maybe depending on the product, but don't even think about it until you're very well established in the Middle East. Start off expecting, if you have a complex solution, expect to have to do things with people and build relationships and go on site as well. A lot of that has drifted away in the US and Europe, whereas in the Middle East there is a real expectation of regular on-site, in-person meetings.
Yeah, no, for sure. That makes a lot of sense, and very consistent with what we see out there, and someone that's made that transition as a company and in the region. I've been in the region before. That trust factor, the partnership building, the kind of loyalty you can create between organization and customers is very different than you see in some other regions. So yeah, very, very good points there, Alex. Thank you for sharing those. Okay, awesome. So this has been a fantastic conversation. I think everyone listening and for us as well learned a ton about your space and kind of your perspectives on things. What we like to do when we kind of wrap up these conversations, we have a little section here at the end with kind of a couple of quick hitters, quick questions and answers, and kind of to wrap things up. So I have a few that I want to ask you. I know IB always has one or two that she wants to drop in there as well. So if you're ready, I'm gonna kind of spitfire two, three questions. Yeah, see what you got there. Okay, so the first one, we'll start off simple. What's your kind of favorite content to consume? A favorite book, podcast, something like that you'd recommend? You mentioned one already, but anything else?
Yeah, so I personally prefer to read books. I occasionally listen to podcasts when I can, but I personally prefer to read books. My favorite business book of all time by a long stretch is a book called Excellence Wins by a guy called Horst Schultz. He built the Ritz-Carlton success brand from scratch, and that book is phenomenal. I mean, my copy is covered in various different colors of ink, and I've bought probably 5 to 10 copies for colleagues and friends, and I can't recommend that book enough.
Awesome. That is a great book. Familiar with that. So very, very good recommendation. Awesome. Okay, so next one for you, Alex. Give us kind of favorite person or people to follow, get inspiration from. Anyone that springs to mind that you think is a good follow?
I take a bit of a strange approach. I follow lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
And I try to hear as many voices as I can, and often voices that completely contradict each other and take opposing views from each other. And I really enjoy hearing strong views on both sides and trying to figure out and then go away and think about it. I think that's why I prefer to read books than consume content in other ways. So I definitely don't have someone that I can say I subscribe to that person's philosophy, or I prefer that person's worldview. I'd much rather listen to both sides of the argument and
very wise.
I love that.
Yeah, that's great. More people should do that exact thing. So I think that's great. Good answer there, Alex. And last one for me, and I'll turn over to Ivy. Kind of as we're kind of starting 2025 here, if you could pick one thing, what's your favorite prediction for 2025?
So I definitely think, coming back to what we were talking about earlier, I think 2025 is going to be the year of the AI agent. I think that is going to be the biggest focus for most companies, regardless of sector, regardless of discipline. I think the AI agent, from everything from sales to to some professions to organizations, that's going to be the biggest race. I think in terms of where most organizations are putting their money, that's where things are going to be hotting up the most this year.
Makes total sense. They're aligned there. Awesome. All right, let me switch over to Ivy. I know she has her favorite questions to ask here. Always.
Alex, what is one life philosophy you like to live by?
That's a good question. So I'm a great believer in karma. There's a few things, a few components of that. The first thing that I always do, and I love to see in other people, is giving without any expectation of receiving. I'm a great believer that if you could keep giving goodness out to the universe, that the universe will repay you in due course. Maybe it's too hopeful, but I always like to live that way. And then two other components of that is always look after people around you and always be kind. Both in business and in personal life. If you're consistently kind, I believe the relationships that you build and maintain are just different to those if you're looking for short wins, or if you're looking to cut corners, or if you're looking to to take advantage in any way. It just doesn't last. It might help you in the short term, but it doesn't help you in the long term.
Yeah, I love that. I love both of those life philosophies. And lastly, Alex, when you're not at work, what are you up to on the weekends? And also, where can people find you?
People can find me on LinkedIn, Alex Jardine on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way of finding me. And I don't really have much of a presence on social media other than that. In terms of what I'm up to outside of work, I've a lot of exercise, a lot of reading, a lot of sports and training. Just about to go on a ski trip in 10 days' time.
Wow.
Try to do that as often as possible.
Incredible. Where are you going?
Going to Courchevel in France, in the Three Valleys.
Nice.
So hoping for good snow there. But yeah, a lot of spending time with friends and being outdoors as much as humanly possible.
Oh, amazing. Well, Alex, we have come to the end of the podcast. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. And
my pleasure.
Well, I'm sure Hader and I, we've learned so much already from you and from the industry that you're on.
Yes, thank you, Alex. It's been definitely a pleasure having you on board for this episode, and yeah, it was just a great learning about the cyber security space, how you do customer success there, and just more about your story, which is awesome. Thank you, Alex, so much.
Yeah, pleasure. Thank you.
We want to thank our sponsors for supporting the Sussex Revenue Podcast. RevSetter is the #1 customer success and management platform in the Middle East region, offering global capabilities mixed with regional solutions that helps your CS, account management, and go-to-market teams 10x efficiency, improve customer experience, and turbocharge customer retention rates.
And thank you to Medlify, a leading marketplace for workers and employers in the healthcare space. Needs and demands meet to create benefits for both sides. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time.